Hello, you wonderful people. So for today's video, I'm going to talk about the trailer that came out for the Trails of Cold Steel Northern War anime. If you haven't seen it already, I'll include a link to it in the description down below. Came out like 9 or 10 days ago at the time of my recordings. I completely missed it. But obviously just talking about everything we saw. First and foremost, the monster we saw, Lavi, I think that's how you pronounce her name, killing at the beginning. That they were all working together to kill. I want to say you fight that exact variation in Ymir in Cold Steel 2, because it's like it's one of those monster hunting quests. But if I'm not mistaken, and I could be mistaken about my Zemuria geology, but isn't like, because Ymir's not, it's on the same side of the map as Northumbria, obviously, like I think, but it's close to Northumbria's border, if I'm not mistaken, which I totally could be. So that could be why that creature is nearby, or it could just be like they're generally maybe in the Nordia region during that part of the trailer. So that could just be an explanation for that. Either way, I do love that I get some of the answers I was curious about, because I think I saw a casting list that also included Reen and Altina. I figured as much. Obviously, they had their part to play in the Northern War, but I am curious. This is something I had posed back when the trailer, when the anime was kind of announced. I was curious, like, oh, will we actually see Reen, or will he just be inside of Valimar the entire time? I mean, to our understanding, it seems like he was in Valimar like the entirety of the Northern War. So, but either way, it's interesting knowing what the main crux of this story is. Obviously, it's our first like opportunity to really get to know about the Northern Jaegers. Obviously, we know a little bit about them because of Sarah and her obviously having been a Northern Jaeger at one point in time. But obviously, you have your run-ins with the Northern Jaegers in Cold Steel 2 and 3, and obviously you have like smaller interactions with them in 4. But it's not a lot. You really don't get. You never like had that full inside look. You get that to some extent with Sarah, but not really. So having a full dedicated series to getting the inner workings and, you know, seeing firsthand, because obviously Northumbria circumstances are always something you get secondhand, like whether it's like, oh, from the Roaring Lion's investigation into the Salt Pill 28 years ago, or even Sarah's perspective on it, like being able to see like the hardships of Northumbria, being able to experience it for ourselves, because that's something we never really gotten in the Cold Steel games, I think will add weight to understanding, like, right, you understand their plight of why they do what they do. Like, they're willing to take whatever job they can to help their country because they have no other means. So that is going to be, I think, a really important thing to kind of gain from this. What I also think is going to be interesting, too, is, like, what kind of battle ordnance are they going to use? Because obviously they're not going to use Arcus unit, not unless they're stolen. Because I know, like, Lloyd and Risha use Arcus units, but I can't remember who they said. But in you know, that little section in Cold Steel 2, they referenced the fact that I can't remember if it was Sal or someone else got them those. I think they referenced someone helping them get them, but I don't remember. So it could be a similar situation where like some of the Northern Jaegers get their hands on some Arcus units because of that, or maybe they're using Enigmas or some other battle ornament maybe that was very exclusive to Northumbria, or maybe they won't even touch on that at all. Stuff like that I'm curious about. But I like that we see that Lavi is a part of an infiltration team. They're going to infiltrate the Empire because they're trying to figure out, like, right, they probably heard whispers about what the Empire has planned for them. So that's definitely going to be interesting to get that insight. I'm also curious how we're going to find out, like, I mean, where was Lavi during, like, the Erebonian Civil War? Because obviously we know some units of the Northern Jaegers were there, but I'm curious, was anyone that Lavi knew went there? They also refer to her as Instructor Lavi. It could just be like a sensei thing of like, hey, you're kind of like you're a more veteran member, even though you're on the younger side. So either she is someone who actually teaches people when it comes to the Northern Jaegers, like she teaches the recruits, or even just using instructor, because that was what the subtitle said, Instructor Lavi. So it could just be like a sensei thing of like, right, you're the older member, well, you're the more experienced veteran member, so maybe that's why. Because obviously I draw the parallel of like, oh, it's interesting because obviously Sarah is an actual instructor at still technically one at this point in time, and well, no, she already left by this point in continuity. So a former instructor who is, you know, obviously from Northumbria, but also Reen hasn't become an instructor yet because of the timeline and everything. So it's just kind of interesting. But we do see, like I said, 2 shots of Valimar because they are trying to get as much information on this hero of the Empire and, you know, what the Empire has. So probably while they probably don't get back in time. I'm curious, are we going to find out, do they get back in time to relay whatever information they could about, hey, there's all this stuff going down? I mean, obviously, like, I'm wondering where they're going to run into any of the Iron Bloods. Like, will, like, Lecter or Claire or even Rufus or Milliam get in their way, you know, like, while they're trying to infiltrate, like, stuff like that. I'm wondering whether there are going to be places in the Empire we get to see animated and stuff like that. Stuff like that gets me, like, really giddy and stuff. But because, like, most of the cast is going to be people we don't know. I did wonder, this is another thing I had posited before too, was I wonder will we meet Valerie. I'm curious if that could be like the story element of, like, right, they don't get back to warn Northumbria in time about what they found out. Because they don't have to necessarily kill these characters. They could still be alive. It's just that, right, because everything in 3, those were Northern Jaegers who wanted to still fight. So it could be like plenty back home who just didn't get involved in everything in 3, you know? So I wonder would they also, like, we would get, like, Colonel Valentine's, like, grave, will, like, some of the Northern Jaegers visit that over the course of, like, it or something. I mean, because it also depends on, like, once again, will we see, because Sarah was involved in it, so she could easily pop in, have interactions with some of them, and also go to her father's grave. I just don't know how in-depth they're going to go there, because they might want to just keep this main, because that might be why they will go, like, right, let's keep Reen the faceless hero that's inside of Valimar, because we want to focus on the Northern Jaegers and not get too caught up in the Class 7 Empire elements of it all. But I do believe, if I remember correctly, Claire was there too. That's why I'm wondering, like, could she be part of, I mean, you know, will we get to see the main man himself, Osborn, kind of be like, nah, let the Northern Jaegers do whatever they want to, like, whatever they do can't stop what's coming. So Northumbria is just one of those places, like, you hear about so much, like, you've heard about Northumbria since the Liberl games, and so having this opportunity to kind of, you know, we might not be able to play anything in Northumbria, we might not be able to visit Northumbria in game, but at least being able to do it animation wise, and like I said, get to see this place, this country that has a giant salt pail that caused so much devastation. I didn't get into it, but Lavi's grandfather, because at first it's like, oh, your grandfather is a hero that kind of abandoned us. I was like, no, because I was wondering if that had any relation to the royal, like, because there is like a royal bloodline in that, because that royal family was basically driven out because the prince or whatever at the time left. He abandoned Northumbria when they were dealing with everything in a salt pail. So I wonder if Lavi's grandfather was someone that kind of stepped up during that time, and he was kind of garnished as a hero. And I think that's going to be the interesting thing. Like, Lavi's probably trying to live up to some expectations about, I mean, maybe she kind of has a similar thing to Valerie. Like, Valerie was kind of like treated so like badly in Northumbria. She had issues because her family is directly, like, it's a blood relation to the prince who abandoned, the royal family that had abandoned Northumbria during the salt pail incident. So, you know, maybe Lavi suffers the same thing where it's like, oh, your grandfather was his hero and he kind of abandoned people. Maybe she has to deal with the same thing, or maybe it's just living up to his expectations. So, right, her grandfather being this hero, and then, like, the Northern Jaegers being the heroes of Northumbria, but then also, like, you're meeting Reen, like, in this giant knight mech that is kind of the hero of the Empire, because everyone outside of the Empire has their own opinion about Reen, because, like, some people didn't hear great things about him. Like, obviously Estelle's like, yeah, I didn't hear the greatest things about him because some stuff paints him as a bad guy, but those who know Reen is like, that's not who he is, you know. And obviously we know what he did in Northumbria, but, you know, and that guilt carried over in 3, but yeah, all he did was stop all the archaisms, because that's going to be interesting too, because we know, like, they utilizes the archaisms during the Northern War. So, like, are there going to be any Ouroboros members that pop up to be like, oh yeah, like, are we going to get like a Campanella being like, oh yeah, sure, use these archaisms? Because I don't know if they ever explained how they had that. Like, either those were just leftovers from when they were working with the society, because the societies, the Ouroboros, we don't really hear too much their perspective on the Northern War, but this could be an opportunity. Maybe we see them meet up. I mean, that could also be a thing too. Like, I mean, there are plenty of society members just out and about. Who's to say there aren't any from Northumbria? So that we could meet, like, an enforcer or an Anguis in this anime, but I'm assuming if it would be anyone, probably, you know, you never know which characters we meet might secretly be enforcers or stuff like that. I mean, obviously this franchise is constantly full of those surprises. I'm like, yeah, so and so is actually so and so is an Anguis or an enforcer, you know. So I was also thinking, like, would we see Sola here? But I'm like, no, because she would be in Crossbell at this point in time, and I don't know if she has any reason to necessarily come back to Northumbria. So obviously these are just some of the thoughts going through my head. I'd love to get to know yours. Do you agree with some of the stuff that's, some of my thoughts? You disagree? What are some of your own about everything? I am so excited. Maybe you're just as excited, or maybe you're less excited. Like I said, just let me know all your thoughts. Really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good